Here is 1898. The place, a sun-scorched hill in Cuba, a bespectacled man on horseback, brimming with an almost manic energy, is about to charge headlong into American folklore. This single, breathless moment would seem to define Theodore Roosevelt, but it was merely one thunderous crescendo in a life composed of relentless action. He was a man who seemed to contain multitudes, a naturalist, a cowboy, a soldier, a reformer, a president who would fundamentally reshape the office and the nation itself, trust-busting the Panama Canal, saving vast swathes of wilderness, winning a Nobel Peace Prize. Theodore Roosevelt was not born a Titan. He was, in fact, forged in the crucible of childhood affliction. Born in 1858 into a wealthy New York City family, young T.D., as he was known, was a fragile and asthmatic boy. He was often confined indoors, gasping for breath during terrifying nocturnal attacks, his future looking anything but strenuous. Doctors of the era had little to offer beyond rest and caution, advice that chafed against the boy's burgeoning inquisitive spirit. His world was often limited to the pages of books, adventure, history, the natural world. This early frailty, however, did not break him. Instead, it ignited a ferocious determination to overcome his physical limitations. His father, Theodore Roosevelt Sr., a man his son would idolize for his entire life, delivered a pivotal challenge. "Theodore," he said, "you have the mind, but you have not the body. You must make your body." This was the spark. The young Roosevelt embarked on a rigorous, almost fanatical program of physical conditioning. He set up a gymnasium in his family home and relentlessly pushed himself through punishing workouts with weights and boxing lessons. This was not merely exercise, it was a conscious act of self-creation. He was building not just muscle, but a philosophy. The idea of the strenuous life, a call to embrace difficulty, to test one's limits, and to engage with the world actively and courageously, was born from these early struggles against his own body. This newfound physical vigor allowed him to pursue his other great passion, the natural world. His fascination began with collecting specimens, from insects to birds, and evolved into a deep scholarly love for nature. Family trips to the countryside, to the Adirondacks, and even to Egypt became grand expeditions for the young naturalist. He learned taxidermy to preserve his finds, meticulously documenting the flora and fauna he encountered. This was not a passive appreciation of beauty, it was an active, scientific engagement. His love for nature was not one of quiet contemplation, but of robust exploration, a theme that would later define his groundbreaking conservation policies as president, where he sought to preserve the wild spaces that had so profoundly shaped him. The boy who could not breathe properly became a man who seemed to draw strength from the very air of the great outdoors. After graduating from Harvard, where he was known more for his flamboyant style and boundless energy than for conforming to the Boston Brahmin mold, Theodore Roosevelt wasted no time in leaping into what he called the arena. In 1881, at the tender age of 23, he was elected to the New York State Assembly, becoming its youngest member. He arrived in Albany, a whirlwind of reformist zeal, immediately taking aim at entrenched corruption. Initially dismissed as an idealistic dandy, his tenacity and mastery of detail soon earned grudging respect. He was a bulldog, relentlessly pursuing investigations into judicial corruption and corporate malfeasance. A Republican who clashed with party bosses, he refused patronage and backroom deals. This anti-corruption stance became a hallmark of his public life. He learned how to build coalitions, how to use the press to his advantage, and how to fight for his principles even when outnumbered. It was here that the seeds of the trust-buster were sown. The death of his mother and his first wife on the same day in 1884 drove him from politics and into the Dakota Badlands. He returned to serve as U.S. Civil Service Commissioner and President of the New York City Police Board, warring against the spoils system, patrolling streets at night himself. Appointed Assistant Secretary of the Navy in 1897, he championed a powerful modern fleet inspired by Alfred Thayer Mahan's sea power. When the Spanish-American War erupted in 1898, Roosevelt could not bear to sit behind a desk. He resigned as Assistant Secretary of the Navy and secured permission to raise a volunteer cavalry, the first U.S. volunteer cavalry. The press quickly dubbed them the Rough Riders. Ivy League athletes, Western cowboys, lawmen, and Native Americans, all drawn by their larger-than-life leader. Training in Texas and Florida, they became a sensation even before combat. Deployed to Cuba, logistical chaos left most horses behind. Cavalry became infantry. Their first fight at Las Guasimas was fierce, bloodying them, hardening their resolve. The defining moment came on July 1st, 1898, the assault on the San Juan Heights. Pinned by Spanish fire and with units stalled, Roosevelt grew impatient. Mounting the only horse, he rallied men with a wave of his hat and led the charge uphill under withering fire. Kettle Hill fell, then San Juan Hill, breaking Spanish defenses. In those frantic minutes, the politician was reborn as a warrior icon, catapulting him toward the governorship and the vice presidency. Roosevelt's rise was dramatic. Made vice president to sideline him, then fate intervened. In September 1901, after President McKinley's assassination, at 42, he became the youngest president in American history. He saw the presidency as a bully pulpit, governing, not merely presiding. The Square Deal sought fairness for workers, businesses, and the public. He took on corporate monopolies, earning the nickname Trust Buster. Suing Northern Securities, his administration won in the Supreme Court, asserting federal power. Abroad, he spoke softly and carried a big stick, a modern navy. He helped midwife Panama's independence, secured canal rights, and became the first sitting president to leave the country to inspect construction. In 1905, he mediated the Russo-Japanese War, guiding rivals to peace at Portsmouth. For this, he received the 1906 Nobel Peace Prize, the first statesman so honored. His presidency declared the United States a major world power. Leadership through strength and a responsibility to promote stability. The Square Deal balanced capital, labor, and the public, answering the upheavals of the Gilded Age. Government, he believed, must be an umpire so no single group dominates. He was not against business, but against exploitation and restraints on fair competition. In 1902, 140,000 miners struck, winter neared, and cities faced freezing without coal. Roosevelt summoned owners and union leaders, treating them as equals, and threatened army seizure of the mines. Owners relented. Miners won gains. A new presidential precedent was set. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle exposed filthy meatpacking. Roosevelt ordered an investigation. Congress passed the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drug Act, expanding federal regulatory power to protect health. By curbing monopolies, mediating labor disputes, and ensuring food and medicine safety, the Square Deal laid the foundation for 20th century progressive regulation. No aspect of Roosevelt's legacy is more visible than conservation, born of youth and hardened in the Dakota Badlands. He saw the beauty and the alarming pace of destruction by unregulated industry, logging, and settlement. Natural resources were a sacred heritage for all Americans. Government must protect them. With Gifford Pinchot, he used the Forest Reserve Act to place vast tracts under federal protection, despite congressional resistance. Before limits took effect, he designated millions more acres with the stroke of a pen. He established 5 national parks and, using the Antiquities Act, declared 18 national monuments, protecting the Grand Canyon and Devil's Tower. He created 51 federal bird reservations and 4 national game preserves. All told, about 230 million acres were safeguarded, foundations of America's public land system. We have fallen heirs to the most glorious heritage, and each one of us is bound to show himself worthy of his trust. After leaving the White House in 1909, TR was far too restless to retire. He embarked on a grand safari in Africa, then a triumphant tour of Europe. He had hand-picked William Howard Taft, but grew disillusioned as Taft and the Republican Old Guard proved too conservative. Challenging Taft in 1912, he formed the Progressive Party, declaring he felt as strong as a bull moose. The platform backed women's suffrage, social insurance, and stricter business regulation, splitting the Republican vote. Woodrow Wilson won. In 1913, he set off on the River of Doubt expedition in the Brazilian Amazon. Rapids, disease, insects, dwindling supplies. Roosevelt suffered an infected leg and tropical fever. His son Kermit refused to leave him. He returned diminished, wrote prolifically at Sagamore Hill, and urged American entry into the Great War. On January 6, 1919, he died in his sleep at 60. A rival quipped, "Death had to take Roosevelt sleeping, for if he had been awake there would have been a fight." Theodore Roosevelt's legacy is as vast and rugged as the American landscapes he preserved. He shattered the limited 19th century executive and built the modern, powerful presidency, using the bully pulpit, executive orders, and federal agencies for reform. His face is carved into the nation's granite at Mount Rushmore. Every safeguarded canyon, forest, and monument of his era speaks to his conservation creed. Every safe label on food and medicine owes a debt to the framework he helped establish. Refusing to shoot a tethered bear cub inspired the teddy bear, an enduring emblem of gentler strength. He was a fierce warrior, a devoted father, a big game hunter, and a pioneering conservationist. He challenged Americans to live strenuously, act with courage, and believe in national greatness. Do what you can with what you have, where you are. Roosevelt changed America by acting boldly, protecting nature and fighting for fairness, leaving a nation stronger, more just, and more beautiful than